Hello, my friends. Welcome to SJ Weekly number 6 for the 29th of July 2018. And I think we all knew where I would be starting today. Here's an article from October 6th, 2017. Knowingly exposing others to HIV will no longer be a felony in California. Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill Friday that lowers from a felony to a misdemeanor the crime of knowingly exposing a sexual partner to HIV without disclosing the infection. The measure also applies to those who give blood without telling the blood bank that they are HIV positive. Modern medicine allows those with HIV to live longer lives and nearly eliminates the possibility of transmission, according to the authors of the bill. Today, California took a major step towards treating HIV as a public health issue, instead of treating people living with HIV as criminals. I don't know where to even start with this shit, guys. Like, here, read this. HIV has been the only communicable disease for which exposure is a felony under California law. There's a fucking reason for that. It's because there's actually a subculture out there, especially within the gay community, where you have people who want to infect other people with their HIV. HIV is a fucking death sentence. We're not talking about a cold here. Like, if you have like a flu or a cold, should it be a felony to infect somebody else with your flu or cold? No. You know, maybe it should be assault. Maybe it should be considered assault if you can actually prove it, but good luck trying to prove it. You don't generally die from a flu or a fucking cold. And I know what everyone says, like, it's homophobic. The law has to be changed because this whole situation right now is homophobic. It's like, fuck you. The same Governor Jerry Brown, vetoes bans on smoking at beaches and parks, calling them too coercive. You can now just transmit HIV anywhere you fucking want. Doesn't matter. Don't gotta tell anybody. You can also smoke in public places. You know, I guess Governor Jerry Brown here is going full libertarian, right? Like, atomized individual, do whatever you want. Except people who violate plastic straw ban could face jail time in California City. So apparently they're banning plastic straws in California, and those who violate the plastic straw ban in Santa Barbara, California could reportedly face jail time. Under the terms of an ordinance the coastal city passed earlier this month, people could face hefty fines and possibly a jail sentence for distributing plastic straws at food establishments. According to the ordinance obtained by the news outlet, people who violate the legislation will be given a written warning on their first offense. But if a person were to defy the ban a second time, he or she could face a fine not exceeding $1,000, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. Holy shit. Let's just square up the state of California right now, okay? Shitting in the streets in San Francisco, completely fine. There's an app out there that tells you where the shit is in the streets. And it's part of their beautiful, diverse, imported culture, so you can't even complain about it. Knowingly exposing others to HIV, completely fine. Smoking on the beaches, they prevented that ban. But fucking plastic straws, that is where we have to start seeing the government step in. Assistant City Attorney Scott Vincent told Reason.com that the city would only pursue criminal charges against a violator after repeat offenses and in a case where there are aggravating circumstances. An aggravated circumstance of distributing a plastic straw. What is that going to be? Like a Dark Knight Joker situation where he stands the straw up and then shoves it through somebody's eye socket? Earlier this week, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors passed a measure to block city stores, restaurants, and bars from selling or providing plastic straws, bringing the city closer to banning the single-use plastic products. Single-use plastic objects are actually a pretty big problem environmentally because a lot goes into making plastic, and plastic doesn't degrade very easily in the natural environment. So when you buy something that is a single-use plastic object, it can actually fuck with the environment quite a bit. And it's also it's also, in my opinion, a massive waste of resources and money, frankly. But I'm not sure if it's more serious than fucking People who go around knowingly exposing others to HIV. But HIV is not the only problem if you're currently in the dating pool. Here's from Hannah, otherwise known as Hannahlyzed. The dating pool for young women is literally porn addicts, sensitive guys you have to perform constant emotional labor for, narcissistic, if not sociopathic, gym bros, emotionally distant manipulators, and performative woke men who still treat women like shit. Now maybe I'm just looking into this a bit too much, but this really sounds like the woman who let that one good guy in her past get away because she thought that she could date up or find somebody better, and has since realized that there's actually not that many good people, men or women, out there in the world, and now she's kind of stuck either being single or being with somebody that she feels like she's settling for. But this whole dating pool thing, let's go through it a little bit. Porn addicts. Yeah. Porn addiction is, I think, a rising problem, honestly. And you can't really find a guy who hasn't watched porn, or who doesn't at least on a semi-regular basis watch porn. And I'm sure there's definitely guys out there who jack it way too much, or who watch way too much porn, and it's probably a serious problem. Sensitive guys you have to perform constant emotional labor for. As soon as I heard of the concept of emotional labor, it made me think that this type of feminist, or this type of SJW, is an actual sociopath. Because for those of you who don't know, emotional labor is when you're like, let's say you're in a relationship, right? And something bad happens in your life. And you feel down, and or you feel depressed, or you feel like something seriously bad has gone on, and you need basically to be comforted by your friends or by your significant other. That's emotional labor. That's like let's say you fail an exam or something at university, and you come back home, and you sit on the couch and you feel terrible, and your girlfriend comes in and is like, "What's wrong?" And then you cry about it a bit and tell her the story, and you guys snuggle and watch Netflix for the next couple hours, or you guys go bang or something, just to try and feel better about the situation. That is what this woman is describing as emotional labor. Now, of course, if you're a guy who's been in a relationship, you recognize this, because this is something that guys do for girls on a fairly regular basis as well, at least if you're actually a decent boyfriend. What emotional labor is, it's part of being in a healthy, functional, successful relationship. Now, the reason why SJWs have chosen to call it emotional labor is because they wrap it in with the other types of unpaid labor when they talk about the gender pay gap. So people say, "Oh, well, women don't work at work as much. They don't do the overtime that men do. They don't do the more dangerous jobs, or the more high-paying jobs that men do, so therefore men should get paid more." Women will say, "Yeah, but we do all this unpaid labor, and that includes taking care of the house and taking care of the children, cooking all the meals." And then you get guys who go, "Well, how about this?" Because women, a lot of lefty women right now, they don't take care of the house anymore, and they don't have kids anymore, and they don't cook the meals anymore. So what actual extra labor are you performing? So they have invented emotional labor. So basically, if you're dating a woman and you expect her to care about your life, that's emotional labor, and you should be paying for that. What a ridiculous fucking point of view. Okay, narcissistic, if not sociopathic, gym bros. Now, you definitely get those types of people who go to the gym and they're overly obsessed with their looks, and they lift a lot. But frankly, people who work out generally just have their shit together a little bit more than people who don't. They want to take good care of themselves, They want to look better, not just for you, but for themselves. They want to feel better. They want to have more energy. There's definitely many types of people that go to the gym, or that run cardio, or that lift. They're not all just narcissists. And I guarantee you, this woman would definitely be one of the types who would scream about wanting a guy who is fit, and that if he's not fit, he's like a fat, lazy slob. Emotionally distant manipulators, yes, those do exist, and they are a problem the same way that porn addicts are. Performative woke men who still treat women like shit. On the surface, you can't really object to that, because you don't want a man who treats a woman like shit. You don't want a person who treats anybody like shit, frankly. It's not a gendered thing. However, I know what she's referring to, and she's not actually referring to men who treat women like shit explicitly. She's talking about men who are not feminists. And there is a very big gap between a non-feminist male and a male who treats females like shit. There's a lot of leeway there. However, she doesn't think so. Now, you have people who reply to her, and you kind of expect this on Twitter. It's funny how women always feel entitled to explain what it is like to be a man to men. Please explain what you mean by sensitive guys. You've got your flaws too. You know, just a bunch of people who are shitting on her for this, right? And then she wrote an article. I wrote an article about the male reaction to my tweet. Oh boy, let's check this out. How male Twitter reacts to the female experience. I don't know if this is a matter of male Twitter. Maybe it's a matter of having a brain Twitter. I've had popular tweets before, but never such a heavy response. Direct messages, a ton of replies, and hundreds of people quoting the tweet with their opinion. Generally, the response was positive. Women feeling heard and validated, some even finding humor in the situation. Men gaining self-awareness and promising to do better, or acknowledging how bad women have it. Many of the likes and retweets were from men themselves who presumably saw some truth in my observation. Unfortunately, there was also a very loud, very angry minority who took offense, telling me that it was somehow my own fault to stop dating men if I hated them so much, or to just date women instead. I already do. Well, good for you. One guy tried to argue that I was being judgy as the types I listed weren't all that bad. Well, there definitely are some types in there that you seem to not have a complete fucking handle on. Obviously, there are some in there that are just complete awful, but there are some in there that are actually fine, and you are honestly just a fucking narcissist. What is it about women sharing their actual life experiences that leads men to think that they can, quote, disagree? I didn't pluck those categories out of my own ass. They are based on years of personal experience, not just mine but friends, family members, colleagues, even strangers on the internet. When something is happening to almost every woman all across society, that means there is a systemic problem. These aren't a few bad apples, this is ingrained socialization all across the board. That men will only unlearn if they actively commit to it. Women can absolutely be toxic and abusive in relationships too, but they are not socialized to do so. Let's shift gears a bit, because I have this picture that I think many of you, if you've been on Twitter for a while, have seen. The guy who was trying to date in his 20s picture. Okay. Girls that take zodiac signs seriously. Girls that listen to Lana Del Rey and share 2 sassy memes. OMG, pizza is bae, feed me and let me nap type girls. Feminists. Emotionally unstable and highly suicidal girls. Now, this picture is obviously not as serious of a listing as Hannah's was. However, if you're a guy in your 20s and you're trying to date, I guarantee you have encountered all of these types of women, and you have said, no, I'm not interested in dating any of these types of women because these women are absolutely fucking terrible. Moreover, I remember when this image first started circulating, there were a lot of women out there on social media who got very, very angry at this, and who said that this was misogynistic, and it was oppressive, and it was cruel, and it was male entitlement. Well, I wonder, what is it about men sharing their actual life experiences that leads women to think that they can disagree? We didn't pluck those categories out of our own asses. They are based on years of personal experience, not just mine, but friends, family members, colleagues, even strangers on the internet. When something is happening to almost every man, all across society, that means there is a systemic problem. These aren't a few bad apples. This is ingrained socialization all across the board, that women will only unlearn if they actively commit to it. And the chances of women actively committing to it are probably less than 0. And unfortunately, I can't find it right now, but there is a companion image to this one that is the guy who's trying to date in his 30s. And it's actually a lot worse because it has labels such as woman with 3 kids from 3 different guys, and woman whose number of previous sexual partners is in the 4-digit range, and woman who is certifiably insane, and woman who is looking for a quote, fixer-upper. The honest truth is, I think right now both genders have it pretty bad when it comes to dating. Social media has kind of ruined our ability to socialize. Netflix and chill has ruined our ability to be intimate. And it's honestly, it's a rough time out there for everybody. It's not just about male Twitter, Hannah. Everybody is having a shitty time right now. And in fact, it's probably contributing to the number of incels that we have. And I did do a video yesterday, Islamists are incels. And there was an article that I wanted to put in it, and I honestly just forgot when I was writing it up. But let's go over it now. If you're over 30 and still own a computer, more likely than not, you're an incel. The world has recently become more terrifyingly aware of incels, which, if you don't already know, stands for involuntary celibate. It's an underground coalition of mainly men who complain about how society actively and unfairly deprives them of sex. Often, they say, because they are too ugly or too fat. I'm not sure if being over 30 and owning a computer makes you an incel. This is kind of like the person who says, if you're over 30 and you still own a bike, you're obviously a fucking loser. It's like, no, maybe I like my cardio. Maybe I like to get around without spending gas. Maybe because I live 5 minutes from everywhere that I need to go, and having a car is not a strict necessity, or at least not using the car every single fucking day. It's kind of like the, was it Leigh Alexander who said it back during Gamergate? She said, ladies, if you come home with a guy and he has a wall full of video games and a weird tricked out computer, don't sleep with him, run. And then like hashtag Gamergate. It's like, holy shit. I don't understand how these people can honestly function. But in any case, the title of this article was later changed because it was written by Ellen Pao, and she was the former Reddit CEO. All right, she changed it to the perverse incentives that help incels thrive in tech. Incels are usually conspiracy theorists, not victims, who believe the world is purposefully denying them their fundamental right to sex on demand, and who share many values and tactics with white supremacist, men's rights, and alt-right groups. Self-declared incels encourage violent acts, including the Incel Rebellion in Toronto that killed 10 people and injured 20 more. What hasn't been discussed much is their presence in our everyday lives, including our workplaces. Like many groups of young men whose misogynistic beliefs gestate online, incels often work in the tech industry and in engineering. And because of tech's long-standing, well-quantified lack of women and other underrepresented groups, it's a natural fit. This is kind of the companion piece to Ellen's tweet that I showed off in the Islamist or Incel video, where she said that CEOs of major tech companies, incels work for you, what are you going to do about it? She honestly acts like incels need to be fucking wiped out. Many large tech companies have unwittingly encouraged these groups in the name of unconstrained debate and free speech. Misguided advocates quote, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant," to argue that open platforms will expose and show the wrongness of hate and terrorism. Instead, though, what we've learned from platforms ranging from Reddit to Twitter to GoDaddy and Cloudflare is that public exposure consistently normalizes, encourages, and amplifies these beliefs. It's not public exposure that consistently normalizes, encourages, and amplifies these beliefs. It's the creation of a echo chamber. It's when you can get 50 people together who believe in something that the mainstream culture does not believe in, put them all in a room and let them just kind of work each other up. And that is why, Ellen Pao, you even have a fucking job. Because you were incompetent as Reddit's CEO. That's how SJWs have managed to actually gain a foothold online. It's not because of the validity of their arguments. It's because they just create bubbles everywhere they go, and then they just radicalize each other. They organize on company Slack channels, creating private discussions to denigrate their coworkers. They defend themselves with arguments on diversity of thought and free speech. They may even leak information to dox coworkers, intending to incite real-life offline harassment. So, if you're the leader of a company, what do? Right now, it seems not much. Oh, well, okay, so you're just scaremongering then. Incel culture isn't a political belief, it's an ideology of hate. We don't accept open misogyny in our workplaces, and make no mistake, that's what incels promote. I have a feeling that you don't know what incels are, or who they are. Incels are exceptionally unattractive men who are lonely. That's it. To be completely honest, if these guys got laid, I think a lot of their bitterness would fucking go away. Not all of it. Some of them want relationships and not just sex, which is, by the way, not an unreasonable thing to want in your life. I mean, there's definitely some hate there. Let's make no mistake. If you go to like the brain cells subreddit, you see these men who are very bitter towards very attractive women or women who have rejected them. And sometimes that does border on hateful. I mean, if they're not actually ramming vans like the Toronto incel van attacker, you can't really do anything about it because they're not doing anything. Hating somebody and only hating them is not violence. Speaking out against them, even in a way that is unfair, it's not violence. It might make them an asshole, but it's not violence. A lot of this article is honestly bullshit, but at the end she says, what actions do you plan to take to address the incels in your workforce and to protect your employees and culture before you don't have a choice anymore? I don't know, what can you do? Like, honestly, tell me, what do you think you can do about this, Ellen? Can you force these people to have sex? Well, who's going to be the woman that they fuck? I mean, can you fire them because their sexual activity is not up to snuff? The reason that this incel shaming is happening is because the left is understanding what the right has known for a while. That if you want to bully men, you call them virgins. You insult their penis size. You denigrate the quality of their sex life or their relationships. Of course, not all men are going to be affected by this, but it is a very easy way to, at the very least, get a good chunk of men under your thumb. However, they also realized that their ideology on the left prevents them from sex shaming. And for a while, like you'll notice this actually on Twitter a few years ago, you had lefty SJW types calling people that they politically opposed virgins, but then they would get called out, right, from their own camp, saying, "Oh, you can't say that because that's sex shaming." You know, that it's his prerogative to have sex or not have sex. So instead of calling people virgins, they now call them incels, even though it's basically the same thing. But they can attach this hatred to incels that they couldn't attach to virgins. I know that this channel's gotten very horseshoey recently, but really, the left railing on men for being incels is very similar to the right railing on women for not being virgins. But let's end with the most terrifying story of all. Why the Nazi Party loved decaf coffee. The Third Reich pushed decaffeinated drinks as official state policy. Okay, if you drink decaf coffee, you're a Nazi. You know how Hitler liked vegetables and he liked his dog and shit like this? Well, now you can add decaf coffee to the list of things that if you do it, you're a Nazi. Hitler breathed air. If you breathe air, you're a Nazi. Of course, the honest truth is that Hitler actually had more in common with the rest of us than he had differences from the rest of us, but nonetheless, the modern version of your morning coffee first appeared in the 15th century, and it replaced caffeine fixes that range from weak coffee bean tea to coffee beans mixed with animal fat. That sounds fucking disgusting. It wasn't until 1905 in Germany that a former coffee roaster apprentice discovered a method for producing a tasteful caffeine-free version of the real stuff. His invention occupies an odd place in the culinary landscape. Rarely loved, sometimes endured, and often despised by coffee purists. But in its early years, decaf coffee found a particularly appreciative and supportive audience. The Third Reich. As the Nazi Party assumed power, its leaders recommended decaf as a way to avoid caffeine, a poison in their eyes. More than a health campaign, decaf was part of a state policy intended to preserve a healthy Aryan population. I mean, why not just drink milk? That's obviously the white supremacist's drink of choice. During the 1920s and 30s, Rosales adapted his marketing to the Weimar Republic's health and fitness crazes. The exquisite bean coffee, Kaffee Heg, protects the heart and nerves, reads one ad, depicting a svelte man in a rider's outfit. Advances in science, technology, and mechanization, along with the rise of cinema, prompted the craze, as well as movements calling for a return to pre-modern health practices. The citizens subscribed to health movements like the Lebensreform, known in English as life reform, which included the ardent nationalists, and desired more natural and back-to-nature lifestyles. In addition to advocating nudism and organic farming, life reform practitioners followed pre-modern diets that swore off stimulants, which included refined sugar, high-proof alcohol, tobacco, meat, and caffeine. So, these people whom the Nazis supported were fucking hippies. We have gone full horseshoe. It's no longer a horseshoe, it's just a ring. Nazis and hippies, hand in hand. This philosophy influenced the public health policy of the Nazi regime. In the 1930s, all of this is part of a Nazi health movement, which became basically part of official policy. Under the Nazi Party, the appeal of decaf as a way to avoid stimulants became state policy meant to safeguard the idolized Aryan race. The Nazis earnestly believed that it was their duty and their responsibility to not only protect the health of individual Germans, but the health of the entire German people as a biological racial entity. This, of course, excluded Jews and other non-Aryans, as well as homosexuals and the sick. So that's what the actual Holocaust was. They gave the Jews coffee.